Good morning, everybody. My name is McKenna Pahlke, and I am a Extension Assistant Professor with the Center for Equine Assisted Services at Utah State University. And thank you for joining our third Thursday webinar all about TAC. Not all of this may apply to different centers. There are some centers that only do groundwork or liberty work or different activities. But for those of us that are using TAC in any way, shape, or form, be it for schooling horses, for participants, for events, this information will be very valuable for you and really promotes equine welfare as well. So, why does tack fit matter? Those of us that are horse people, I sure hope we understand that tack fit is very important. Nobody wants to walk around in a size 9 shoe when you're actually a size 4. Nobody wants to wear size 16 jeans when you're actually a size 30. It can impact a lot of different things. Um, we've got this picture right here of an example of a horse that has had improper tack fit at some point in its life. We can see that it's got some white spots on its coat, and that is caused from immense pressure over a period of time that has actually killed the nerves and changed the way that that hair follicle grows. And if you also look right behind that wither, where that scapula starts, there's a pretty significant atrophy of muscle. And that's most likely caused by tack fit because it lines up pretty closely with where those white spots are. And so not only are we causing physical issues with our horses, but we can also cause behavioral problems with our horses. They may become resistant to tacking. You pull a saddle out, you pull a bridle out, they may pin their ears, swish their tail, start to paw at the tie rail, become very uncomfortable in what they associate as a tacking up area. They can become cinchy or girthy. And of course, a lot of these things can come from bodywork issues, misalignment inside of that body. But a lot of the times, poor fitting tack can cause these issues or exacerbate them. Behavioral issues like bucking, bolting, or refusal to go forward often can be tied to tack fit issues. That horse is trying to communicate as best as it can. Hey, every time I'm doing a trot transition, my shoulders get pinched and it hurts. Um, their communication is typically as honest as you can get. And so if you are finding behavioral issues like that under saddle, take a look at your tack first. Horses may have altered movement patterns. If a saddle pad is impeding that horse's shoulder movement, they may not be able to track up quite as well or reach out with their front legs. If the nose band of that horse's bridle, if you utilize nose bands, is too tight, it can impact the way that horse's head works with that bit, as well as their response to their reins. And so many different things. Horses may get lumps, bumps, swelling, soreness, rub marks, white hairs like we saw, all signs that there is something going on and pressure is being caused by tack. On the rider side of things, riders may struggle to get stable. They may experience discomfort in the saddle. And we all kind of know as you're learning to ride, there is some discomfort that's associated with it. Your muscles are learning a new pattern. You're having to sit and use your body in ways that you probably haven't had to use anywhere else before. So like a small level of discomfort is sometimes understandable when riding, but if it is a pretty consistent experience for that participant or it's extreme pain, you may need to look at what that tack is doing to them. Riders may also struggle to get proper alignment. This is a big one. Riders can only ride as good as their tack supports them. If we have stirrups that are far too long, far too short, they're riding in a saddle that's way too big for them, way too small for them. They're in a, let's say, cutting style saddle that has a very deep seat, and that rider struggles with their trunk tone, and we're trying to ask them to sit up, look where you're going, and they just simply can't in a saddle like that. That could be a sign that that tack doesn't fit that rider very well. So, how to check a saddle's fit? There are a ton of resources out there online. We live in an information age right now, so none of this information is original or new to Utah State University necessarily. We actually pulled a lot of this from Shalacy. They have amazing saddle fitting courses and 9-point checks for both English and Western saddles. So I highly recommend you go check out their website and their resources. But for purpose of this webinar, we threw it up on here. So if you put your hand on the pommel and the gullet, well, the pommel at gullet area and where the back of the saddle is, and you rock it back and forth between your hands on that horse's back with or without a pad. It's good to try with both. If that saddle rocks pretty significantly, that's a good sign that your saddle is not fitting your horse. If it pops up in the back, it's probably too wide in the front, etc. So trying to find a saddle that sits pretty stable on a horse's back with some pressure. Another thing that gets overlooked because of pads is wither clearance. Without a pad, does that saddle already have 2 to 3 fingers width of wither clearance? Everybody's fingers are a little bit different, but think of a general adult-sized finger, and you want to make sure you've got plenty of room for that scapula, the top of the wither, to move around and not be impeded by a saddle. Are all the panels within the saddle making contact on the back? If not, you're getting something called bridging. The panels on the Western and the English saddles are on the bottom. They're typically following that shape of the tree. And if they are not making contact with the back, it will cause issues and pressure points. If they're causing too much pressure, that's where we typically get our white spots from. Are the billets or latigo hanging where the girth or cinch should go? Every horse's anatomy is pretty different, and we'll talk about that a little bit when we go into girth or cinch fit. But if that saddle, you put it up where it feels like it's very comfortable, it's not rocking back and forth, there's wither clearance, you've got panel contact, it's sitting anatomically where it should, but then you go and you look down to where your girth is, and you're like way behind the heart girth area. That might not be the best fit, or you may need to look into a different style of rigging for that saddle. Does the saddle sit behind the shoulder? Keeping in mind that range of motion of the shoulder, it's a very impressive range of motion on our horses. And does it sit in front of that SI? We never want any weight bearing anywhere near that SI joint. It can cause a lot of pain. It can cause kissing spine, things like that. So making sure we're sitting in that actual anatomical weight bearing area of that horse. Do the tree and the gullet allow for free movement in that horse? In the Western saddles, it's pretty typical to get something called a semi-quarter horse bar or a full quarter horse bar or something along those lines. Those typically aren't the best way to actually be measuring your horses. You need to get genuine measurements of each saddle and try to see if it will be wide enough for your horse's shoulders, if it's narrow enough for their back, if it will work with musculature that may be built, different things like that. And then also the angle of the tree matters a lot. And that's kind of where that semi-quarter horse bar, full quarter horse bar comes from. I think that's something that English saddles do very well, is they tend to match the angle of their tree a lot better to horses' individual anatomy than a lot of Western saddles do, unless they're bespoke or custom made to a horse. So checking that the angle of the tree matches the horse's shoulder so that it will not pinch that shoulder or be too wide. Okay, so just a kind of a brief overview of types of saddles. Now there's Australian saddles, bareback pads, so many other types of saddles other than what's listed on this slide. But we're talking a typical saddle you might walk into a consignment store and see. On the Western side, number one, that's a Wade saddle. It's typically a very heavy duty saddle with a deeper seat, usually with rough out material, which is kind of like that grabbier leather texture. It's not finished leather. So those saddles may be great for participants that are adults and have balance issues because it'll have a little bit grippier of a seat for them, but also a nice deep seat for them to feel comfortable. Number two is a barrel saddle. It's got a pretty high cantle and a very deep seat and a pretty high narrow horn. Then number three, we've got our trail saddle. These saddles usually have wide, deep seats that sit you back quite a bit. They typically have padded seats as well, which can be comfortable for riders that have issues with pressure points. Number four would be considered our cutting saddle. It has a deeper seat as well, but a pretty short cantle. It has a tall, big horn, and they're usually quite long saddles. Usually riders will sit in these several inches above what they would in a normal fitting Western saddle to allow them to kind of get down deep into that saddle to move with that horse while they're cutting. Five would be considered like a roping or a ranching style saddle. It has kind of average everything, average size horn, average size seat, average weight. It's pretty typical for what you're going to go see in a store. Those and trail saddles are pretty easy to find in stores. And a lot of participants do pretty well with these. With the roping saddles, usually those billets And the fenders of the saddle are aligned better with kind of what you're looking for rider alignment. Whereas reining saddles and cutting saddles may adjust that alignment a little bit more. So if you look at 6, the fenders of that saddle, which is a reining saddle, they're pushed forward slightly more to assist with position in the seat during reining maneuvers, but that will make it harder for you to get that proper ear, shoulder, hip, heel alignment in that saddle. Reining saddles do also have a smaller horn and a flatter seat and a smaller cantle, so it can be easier for riders with mobility issues to get in and out of. On our English saddle side, number 1, we've got our dressage saddle. It has those long billets, it has the knee blocks, and it also has a very high cantle. The knee blocks or thigh blocks, they can be very beneficial for riders that need a little bit of extra support, but that high cantle can be really hard for some participants with mobility issues to get over independently with mounting and dismounting. Number 2, we've got what's kind of considered an all-purpose saddle. You could do a little bit of jumping in it, a little bit of flat work, maybe a little bit of dressage. It has a small thigh block or knee roll, a little bit higher of a cantle, and a little bit more depth to the seat, but not nearly as deep as a dressage saddle would be. And then number 3, we've got what we would consider more of a jumping style saddle. The flaps are very far forward. The seat is pretty flat. There's not much of a cantle there. And it's in general a lot lighter weight of a saddle than the other 2 styles. These saddles can be great because they're easier for participants to put on, take off, as well as mount and dismount independently. But those forward-facing flaps can sometimes get in the way of different participants' anatomy. So that's one thing to consider. Okay, so how to check a cinch girth's fit. There's a lot of different information out there on these, and so do your research. But in general, here are some recommendations. For a Western cinch, is there about 8 inches between the saddle D-ring and the cinch buckle on each side of where that cinch is going to hang. For a Western cinch, when it's hanging as it's fit to the horse, does the cinch sit level with the middle of the cannon bone? Keeping in mind every horse is different anatomy, but that's kind of a good marker for you. No matter the style of saddle or style of cinch, does that girth evenly distribute pressure? That's the biggest thing about cinches and girths. You can check these by looking at the sweat, feeling heat, looking for any swelling after a harder ride in that horse. But if that girth is not evenly distributing pressure, if there's too much on the sternum, too much on the sides, other pressure points, that is where a lot of cinchiness and girthiness can come from. Does that type of cinch or girth actually work with your horse's anatomy? The next slide will talk a little bit more about that, but every horse is kind of a unique individual, just like people, and there's a lot of different styles out there to help meet those needs. So with that cinch and girth fit, here is kind of that anatomy I was talking about. For the asymmetric style girth, we've got probably what is considered more of a like warm blood, thoroughbred type build. The saddle and the girth are pretty well aligned. The girth typically doesn't need to go forward or backwards. The what they call athletico girth, that is where that horse has a pretty prominent wither that can impede that saddle fit, and typically that girth needs to go ahead of where that saddle is sitting. For the anatomical girth, we kind of see something along those lines as well. It allows the girth to sit in the natural position without interfering with that elbow movement. For the crescent style girth, horses that have a short back and a sprung rib cage, so we're talking a lot of ponies, Arabians, Morgans, some styles of quarter horses, that girth will slide forward into the elbow, kind of no matter what you're doing with your saddle fit. So that crescent girth really assists with making sure that girth is giving room for the elbow and that shoulder movement as well. So here's pictures of some of those different styles. You can get these English and Western, keep in mind. It was easier for me to find pictures of English style girths, but they have all of these in Western as well. And if you are a person that is into handmade materials such as like mohair or different things like that for Western saddles, you can request to have these styles made with the buckles put in order. Some other ways to kind of check your cinch girth fit is the 2-finger test. With your horse standing relaxed, you should be able to fit 2 fingers between the girth and the horse's side, as well as being able to kind of get 1 finger up to 2 fingers underneath where that sternum is. It's best to check where the sternum is, so right at the bottom of that cinch girth, as well as on their sides, because we are looking for even pressure distribution. Don't just check one or the other. Horses often tense their muscles when being saddled. There's kind of this, horses hold their breath in. And there was actually a research study done where it's not so much them holding their breaths, but actually their muscles and their fascia tensing up in preparation for that saddling process. As those muscles relax, then that horse's cinch may loosen up a little bit. So take them for a short walk after you tighten it up. Make sure everything is safe before you hop on. And then pay attention to how that saddle feels and whether your horse shows any resistance or discomfort. This often takes some trial and error with every individual horse, as well as materials of cinches and girths, because there's neoprene, leather, padded, mohair, synthetic, all kinds of different things. And every horse has their preferences. But just watch how your saddle feels with different types of cinches or girths, or what you notice in participants, and seeing if that horse is communicating any discomfort. Okay, bridles. Um, there is some fantastic information from the Equine Welfare Federation on bridle fit, and I actually pulled this image from one of their pamphlets, so I want to give them credit for that. But they have this fantastic image of where typical pressure points are on a bridle. Now, of course, this is an English style bridle. Western bridles are a little bit different. They typically have significantly less buckles and hardware and leather to them. But all of the pressure points still apply for Western bridles. And the nose band can also apply to a hackamore or a Bozal fit as well. So, are there any tight spots in the pressure points for your style of bridle? Is the bridle pretty stable on the head, or does it shift? When you pull on a rein, does it open up on one side? Does it move? Does it pull on the side of the opposite eye? Look at things like that. Are there any metal buckles or rawhide buttons on those pressure points? We want to avoid those sensitive pressure points so that way our horses aren't getting overwhelmed with that or causing pain. Is the material of your bridle very stiff or is it supple? We do want to be looking for higher quality tack items that have pre-conditioned leather that's pretty soft and can move with that horse. And then, does that bit fit properly? And is the horse up to date on their dental work? That can affect the way that a bridle fits and the way that a horse reacts to their bridle. Not even just that bit, because we will talk about the bit as well. So, checking a bit's fit. Here we've got a regular O-ring snaffle that's got a little copper lozenge in the middle. And so it can kind of show you a couple of different things that we're looking at for bit fit. There is the thickness of the mouthpiece. There is the length of the mouthpiece, which your typical average horse is going to be about 5 inches. Smaller horses, usually 4.5, 4.75, and then larger draft horses can be up to 6 or 7s. And then you've got your ring diameter. And of course, that matters depending what type of bit you use. Some people prefer curb bits, some prefer snaffles, some prefer bitless and Bozals. There's all kinds of different options out there, but these are just some general recommendations. Measured from corner to corner of the mouth, does the bit fit actually within that mouth? Is it sticking out really, really far? Does those rings of a snaffle actually kind of come into those lips a little bit? Is it not wide enough? Are there hinges or rings or areas that could pinch lips? If so, you may need to be looking at a slightly bigger bit. Does it feel tight on the sides of the mouth with little to no room to move the bit from side to side? If so, it may be a little bit too narrow. You do want some slight side to side movement. You want about 1/8 to 1/4 of an inch space on either side of the mouth for that bit to move. Just like people, some horses have smaller mouths than others, making a thicker bit uncomfortable. And this is where a dentist or a veterinarian can really assist with assessing what type of bit may work best with your horse. If you are a straight mouth, curb bit type person, they may assist you with picking the correct port, if any, for your type of bit that you choose. If you enjoy the snaffles, maybe you can help ascertain whether your horse would be more comfortable with something a little bit more narrow, a little bit more wide based on their individual anatomy. And on that note, horses with bigger tongues and low palates could find certain bits uncomfortable, such as single jointed snaffles. These are usually thicker diameter bits. For those horses who need tongue clearance, a ported bit or even a double jointed snaffle could provide a little bit more comfort. So just some examples of how individual anatomy can affect our horses. Okay, halter fit. There may be some people who are watching this webinar that don't do riding in their program. And halter fit is just as important because it's probably what you're working your horses with in every single day. If we look at the image on the left, this is a properly fit halter. If you look at that number 1 circled knot, and this isn't a rope halter, but you can also think about buckles if you utilize leather or nylon halters. It's pretty level with where the eye is. Number 2, that strap is behind the jaw, pretty similar to where you might be able to see a throat latch. Number 3, that knot, where it comes down to the lead rope isn't hanging super low beneath that horse's face. And then number 4, that nose band is halfway between the eye and the nose. So we're avoiding being too high up and then also being too low where there are sensitive bones that are delicate and easy to break. If we look at the image on the right, it is the complete opposite. The halter in general is far too loose on that horse and down far too low. This is something I see a lot in online photos or Facebook posts about marketing and selling horses and things like that. It always makes my eye twitch a little bit because there's a lot of halters that are put on improperly and it can cause a lot of damage to a horse and also miscommunication to a horse. So check your halter bit. Okay, so now we're going to talk a little bit about adaptive tack. Equine assisted services programs serve so many different types of participants. Whether your program incorporates riding, liberty, groundwork, or something else, understanding how to adapt tack to a participant's needs is crucial for their success and your horse's welfare. So here are some styles of reins, and this is not exhaustive. There's a lot of different styles of reins out here that aren't even listed that are traditional styles of reins, right? So rubber reins, Rommels, splits, so many different styles, but here's what I consider adaptive tack. We've got rainbow reins that are really popular in lesson programs because those participants can grab a certain color. They have a little bit of a texture grip to them, and it makes it easy for them to understand where they should be holding their reins and to learn how to properly have contact with that bit if that's something your horse is trained to do, is have that contact. Padded reins are really great for participants that struggle with grip or maybe they dislike that textured grip of those rainbow reins or some other types of rubber reins, and it can also teach them where to hold their reins. Ladder reins are great for participants that have limited mobility. If they only have use of one arm, one hand, one finger, things like that, the ladder reins are pretty easy to pick up and also promote kind of like that length of that horse's head. So we're not holding too far up or too far back for control. Loop or handle reins are also great. They're a little bit more adjustable than those ladder reins. They provide those loops that participants can grab onto with one hand or both hands. And then we also have these handle reins that are also adjustable with those little silver rings, but they're more of a good grip for those participants that may struggle with other types of material or other types of handles. These handles on the handle reins, number 5, are pretty solid handles, so they're easy for those participants to grab. It also can help promote proper hand-holding position if you have their thumbs on top. Okay, so styles of halters. Again, not exhaustive. There's so many styles of halters out there, but these are kind of the 3 basic main types that you're going to find at a tack store if you walk into. We've got a rope halter. They have sometimes what are called nerve knots. If you look at the nose band of that halter, there are 2 extra knots that are said to hit pressure points on the horse to make communication easier. There are also rope halters that don't have those nerve knots. Then we've got leather halters, which are typically more of a breakaway style halter, and they do look quite nice on program horses. And then we've got nylon halters, and these are also super popular. They may have a variety of different styles of buckles and clasps, but the ones that have the buckle that go up around the poll and then a clasp that can come underneath that chin, or not the chin, underneath their jaw, behind their cheek is pretty common. Rope halters are typically very difficult for new participants to learn how to tie properly and how to fit properly because you have to adjust that fit to the horse. Leather halters are fantastic as well as nylon halters because those participants don't have to adjust that fit to the horse. You can have one halter for one horse that's already set and they just have to get that buckle up and over them. Okay, so styles of lead ropes. Lots of styles of lead ropes. There are poly lead ropes, cotton lead ropes, yacht ropes. Typically people that do a lot of groundwork, they really like these yacht ropes because they're a little bit heavier. They have a little bit more feel to them. The cotton ropes can be popular with those that may have grip issues or things like that because they're a little bit thicker, a little bit softer, easier to hold on to. And the poly ropes are really common because it's usually what are sold with halters. You see them at barns all over the country. Okay, so some specific styles of adaptive tack. We have vaulting surcingles. These are very popular with hippotherapy programs or programs that are incorporating equine movement to assist with physical therapy, occupational therapy, or speech language therapy on horseback. Typically, participants will just have these with a style of pad, and the participants will be able to hold on to those vaulting surcingles to support themselves. Night latches, which is what they're called for English or for Western saddles, or grab straps and wither straps is what they're called for English saddles. They're a great handhold for a rider who may need a little bit more support. If you're grabbing onto the horn of a Western saddle, it can affect your posture in a detrimental way. And so a night latch being there can assist with a little bit better grip. There are also seat savers. These are available for English and Western, and these seat savers are really good for participants that may have pressure points where the saddle is uncomfortable for them, or if you have a participant who is sliding in their saddle and they might need something that's a little bit more grippy for them. Some other options for adaptive tack would be a gait harness or a gait belt. These are common for participants who need a little bit more support while they're riding. Typically participants who have like a sidewalker on both sides. Maybe they struggle with leaning, they struggle with independence with their trunk. These gait belts can be a great way to help keep those riders on their horses if that's what your program is looking to do. Or there's these brand name saddles called Hinky Dinky saddles. They're designed for kids. They're very supportive. They're very soft. They kind of safely lock a kiddo into that saddle, and it could be a great option for a younger rider who has very low tone or trunk control. I did want to talk a little bit about custom saddles. There's a lot of different options. We can see an English one at the top and then two different styles of Western saddles here. And personally, this is just my opinion, I do not like using these style of saddles. I think they're very cool. I think they're very innovative. I like the idea behind them. However, I always get concerned about what would happen in an emergency. Most of these saddles, I could not safely get a participant off in an emergency if a horse were to freak out, were to spook, were to fall, were to trip. And I could see them causing a lot more harm than good. So I personally stay away from these. The other thing to consider too with these custom style saddles is, are you putting a participant in an unsafe position just for the purpose of riding? Not everybody at the end of the day gets to ride. Riding is a privilege, right? And we need to watch out for the welfare of our horses and watch out for the type of positions that we're putting participants on. It can be really hard because there can be caretakers or parents who can be a little bit pushy. And they're like, no, I want my kid to ride on and we'll just strap him in. It'll be just fine. But they don't understand the danger that can come with that. And it can also put them in a very compromising position that can cause a lot of stress and duress to their muscles because they're sitting in a very unnatural position for them. And we're doing that just to make somebody happy. And we do want people to be happy. We're in a service industry, but we need to think about the health and safety of that participant as well as that horse. So just kind of consider, am I forcing this to work because somebody wants me to make it work, or is this actually what's good for the participant? Okay, styles of stirrups. A lot of different styles of stirrups. One that's really common for programs that serve a lot of youth are these tapaderos. They're based in Western heritage where people will be riding through a lot of sagebrush, and so they needed tapaderos to cover their stirrups to protect their boots and their jeans. We've kind of adopted those into a way to help with participants that may not be wearing proper boots with a heel. Either they don't have them, they can't purchase them, or for sensory issues, they don't want to wear them. These tapaderos prevent that foot from going all the way through the stirrup. There are Western breakaway stirrups. If you look closely at this image, there's an arrow pointing to the left of that. That side opens up with pressure. And so if a participant were to get their foot stuck, while a horse is spooking or potentially bucking, that foot will come out a lot quicker and easier. Same thing for that English style breakaway. There are also S stirrups, S curve or safety stirrups that have kind of that swoop to them that allow a foot to slide out a little bit easier. And then just recently, I want to say it was either last year or the year before, the United States Pony Club and several other major organizations came out saying that they would not allow peacock stirrups in their programming or at their shows. We try our best to follow best practice, and if a large organization says no due to safety concerns, we consider that a no for us as well. I wouldn't be surprised if the Professional Association of Therapeutic Horsemanship International comes out with a statement as well, because peacock stirrups are pretty popular in adaptive riding scenarios, but they can cause a lot of harm. So at USU, we specifically do not use them because we follow industry standard. Okay, so some safety considerations. Let's see. Training and inspections. Do your volunteers and staff know how to properly put on safety equipment so it functions? For those breakaway stirrups, they do have to be facing out the correct way in order for them to function. Do you test your equipment on a regular basis to ensure it still functions? Sometimes on those safety stirrups, they can get a little bit rusted, a little bit old, a little bit stuck, and with pressure, they may not pop open. Some reins may start to fray or wear away, so looking at things like that. And then also considering the importance of the individual. Adaptive equipment should increase safety without limiting emergency response, kind of thinking about those custom fit saddles. You want to avoid over restriction and always make sure your rider is comfortable with whatever equipment they're utilizing. So it does need to be a conversation with your participants. Hey, are you comfortable if we have this night latch on the Western saddle for you to grab? Do you like this style of reins? Does it feel good to you? Those are all important when we're trying to fit to the participant. Okay, so some case studies. We're about to wrap it up, but just three quick examples of some adaptive tack needs being met. So a rider with low trunk tone struggles with balance and transitions. That is where a wither strap or a night latch can provide stable support for that participant. They can grab onto that, hold on to it while still holding a rein safely to assist with those transitions while they're developing that trunk tone if it's possible for them. Number two, a rider struggles with their grip on the reins throughout the lesson, but refuses to use rainbow reins or textured rubber reins due to sensory issues. That might be where padded reins are a good fit because they can still have a firm grip with a better soft texture. And then number three, this is actually pretty common, and I don't often see a lot of centers doing anything about this, but a rider that has a diagnosis that causes them to lean unevenly in the saddle. Could be scoliosis, could be cerebral palsy, something along those lines. That uneven weight distribution is causing that saddle to slip and that participant to slip pretty regularly, and it can be hard on volunteers as well. One thing you could do to adjust for that is putting that participant in a dressage saddle that has pretty large thigh blocks to help support them a little bit more. You can put them in a non-slip seat saver, so something a little bit more grippy, or even consider padding or shims underneath that rider to help promote their better balance. And also on an equine welfare side, an uneven rider causes stress on that horse. So making sure they're as even as possible to watch out for our horses. Okay, so thank you guys for coming to this webinar. Just some takeaway notes is good tack fit affects horse welfare and rider success. Adaptive equipment should be individualized to each participant and to each horse. Small adjustments can create major improvements. Lengthening stirrups by one hole, shortening them by one hole can change posture in riders. I've seen it happen. And safety and comfort tend to go hand in hand. So making sure our horses are taken care of and our participants are taken care of is our utmost importance. And thank you guys for attending today.